For years, gardeners have chased bottled miracles, store-bought fertilizers with promises of lush leaves and giant harvests. But those glossy labels rarely tell the truth. Real plant power doesn't come from something you buy. It comes from something you brew. Today, I'm going to share a backyard secret that's as old as soil itself. A living liquid that feeds plants from the roots up, boosts microbial life, and transforms even tired, compacted dirt into fertile, thriving ground. And the best part? It's completely free. This is the backyard brew I've used for years to outgrow anything that came from a store shelf. And once you understand how it works, you'll never look at your compost pile the same way again. The old world farmers knew that the best fertilizer was alive. Before chemical agriculture took over, farmers relied on ferments, natural brews made from compost, weeds and waste, to feed their crops. These weren't fancy concoctions in labelled bottles, but bubbling mixtures full of living microbes. Across continents, every culture had its version. In Europe, farmers brewed compost tea, while in Japan and Korea they developed fermented plant and fish extracts like jadam and IMO solutions. These brews weren't about adding more nutrients. They were about unlocking the nutrients already there. They recharged soil biology, improved disease resistance, and encouraged explosive root growth by feeding the microlife that feeds the plants. When I first stumbled across these methods, I was honestly a bit skeptical. I'd seen gardeners ferment everything from banana peels to molasses, and well, many claimed overnight results. But what really set the traditional brews apart was their simplicity, and the fact that they worked because they were biologically active, not just chemically rich. When done right, you're not feeding your plants directly. You're actually feeding the entire underground ecosystem that keeps them thriving. The recipe begins with probably the most overlooked resource in your yard. This backyard brew doesn't start in a mason jar. It starts in the compost heap, the weed pile, or even your kitchen scraps. The goal here is to create a living extract of nutrients and microorganisms from natural waste materials. I use 3 basic components: a source of greens like fresh weeds or grass clippings, a carbon base such as leaf mould or old compost, and a microbial activator, which is something sugary like molasses or even a splash of fruit waste juice. All you need beyond that is water, preferably non-chlorinated, and a large bucket or barrel. The process is simple, but, intentional. Fill the container halfway with your green material. Those weeds and clippings are packed with nitrogen enzymes and trace minerals. Add your carbon source to balance it out and slow decomposition just enough to encourage fermentation, not rot. Then pour in water until it covers everything by a few inches. Stir it well and add a spoonful or 2 of your sugar sauce. This sugar doesn't feed the plants, it feeds the microbes, giving them the energy to multiply rapidly. All right, so you'll want to cover the container loosely to let those gases escape, and then just let it sit for about a week. Remember to give it a good stir once a day. This keeps the oxygen flowing and helps prevent any of those, unpleasant anaerobic smells. By day 5 or 6, you'll start to notice a sweet, earthy aroma. That's your signal that it's alive and ready. At this point, go ahead and strain out the solids and keep the liquid. This dark, nutrient-rich brew can now be diluted with water, 1 part brew to 10 parts water, and you can apply it directly to the soil around your plants, or even spray it on their leaves. So, what you've just made is a living fertilizer that builds soil health, encourages root development, and keeps diseases at bay naturally. Pretty amazing, right? Now, what really makes this homemade brew so powerful isn't its NPK value, it's the biology. Synthetic fertilizers, well, they rely on salts and chemicals that force-feed nutrients, often at the expense of your soil's long-term health. Over time, those salts can build up, compacting the soil and, unfortunately, killing off the beneficial microbes. But the backyard brew? It does the exact opposite. It's packed with bacteria, fungi and protozoa that bind soil particles, unlock trace minerals and release plant hormones naturally. That's the real magic. When I first started using this method, I noticed an immediate improvement in the texture of my soil. Areas that had been hard and crusted started holding water evenly. Within just a few weeks, my seedlings developed deeper roots and darker leaves, even without store-bought fertilizer. Over the next season, yields improved, but honestly, the real difference came in plant resilience. My tomatoes stopped cracking under irregular watering, and my leafy greens resisted common fungal diseases, all because the soil beneath them was alive and balanced. There's a reason this approach has stood the test of time. In the Amazon, ancient tribes created black earth soils, terra preta, by feeding organic matter and charcoal to microbes. In Korea, natural farmers still use plant ferments for large-scale farming without chemicals. They all understood the same principle. The key to explosive plant growth isn't adding more. It's activating what's already there. Once your brew is ready, the key is, well, consistency. Apply it weekly during the growing season as a soil drench. If you're using it on young plants, just dilute it a little more. If you're treating poor soil, pour it heavier to encourage microbial colonization. For foliar feeding, use a fine spray in the evening or early morning to allow the beneficial organisms to settle on the leaves without burning them in the sun. One of my favourite applications is to soak seed trays in the diluted brew before planting. The seeds germinate faster and emerge stronger, already connected to a living microbial network. Another method I use is to add a cup of the brew into my compost pile as I turn it. It accelerates decomposition dramatically, turning raw waste into finished compost weeks earlier. Even if you're not an active gardener, pouring the brew around trees or over grass improves soil structure and moisture retention across your yard. The real beauty is that you can customize the ingredients depending on what you have. Got nettles? Use them. They're rich in silica and magnesium. Banana peels? Great for potassium. Old coffee grounds? Add them for nitrogen and beneficial fungi. Every brew becomes a reflection of your local ecosystem, feeding back into the same soil that produced it. This ancient method is still the future of sustainable gardening. There's no brand name for this kind of fertility. No barcode, no packaging, just natural processes working in harmony. This backyard brew is proof that the answers to explosive plant growth were always beneath our feet, waiting to be rediscovered. The old farmers didn't need hydroponic boosters or lab-made nutrients. They trusted the balance of decay and renewal where every scrap of life returned to the soil as fuel for the next season. So next time you're tempted to reach for a bottle of chemical fertilizer, remember that your best plant food can be brewed for free using nothing more than what your backyard already gives you. It's simple, it's powerful, and it's the kind of wisdom that lasts. If this guide helped you rediscover the power of living soil, make sure to subscribe to Botanical Bliss. Share this video with growers and homesteaders who believe in feeding the earth the way our ancestors did, naturally, sustainably, and with respect for the living world beneath our feet.